Shalom everybody, my name is Sarah from Ancient Biblical Oils and Ancient Biblical Healing. So along the journey, I had begun to use oils because of the several home births that I had done with doulas. And I was very intrigued by the concept that these could work for pain, because that was something that I experienced in the labor, and I experienced just more optimal contractions and things like that there. And I began to use the oils on myself, but it was 100% health and wellness. It really had nothing to do with the scriptures. Daniel was still in strong pursuit of the scriptures, and I was lagging behind, always lagging behind. But with him in what he was teaching and believing. And one day whenever I tried to speak to people about the oils in banks, or I would see somebody and they would be talking about their health condition, I would try to talk to them about the oils. It was just closed doors. Everybody thought I was crazy. My family said I was doing witchcraft. Daniel's family rather. Some of the people said that I was doing witchcraft and things like that there. And it was fine for me. And he also was like a little bit skeptical, just didn't register. And then the one day he woke up in the morning and he said, I'm going to make a range of ancient biblical oils. And I was very shocked because, someone that wasn't showing interest in anything that I was saying about this, it was just like, oh, by the way, he quickly designed the label, made his oils, and had them on the counter. And he began to write a book, which was definitely inspired by the Ruach, because he is a farmer and a miner. He's not a writer and a reader. And he literally wrote a book, 10 chapters on ancient biblical healing. And he began to share with me and teach me on the meaning of olive oil and the meaning of frankincense and myrrh and the spiritual significance and what they symbolize, and how inside of frankincense and myrrh is a concept of seraphim and ministering angels, and angels that are able to take prayers up to heaven and bring down messages, and it's all in the Hebrew language. And when I began to use the oils and the resins from that perspective, it took my faith from a crippling along with belief and trying to understand things into a different place. I was able to take frankincense and myrrh out of health and wellness, put it into the scriptures, and then use it again. And Elohim began to teach me out of my children, out of my own use. The opportunity would present itself daily, weekly, monthly, 3 times a day to use frankincense and myrrh and document the results. One of the most groundbreaking situations for me, we had already started doing teaching and talking about it on a very small level. We were speaking about it on our Facebook page, and lots of interest, lots of excitement. And I had one of my crashes where my body just shut down, and I was in extreme pain, and the pain where you can't speak and you're just in bed and you can't move and everything. And at the same time, earlier that day, Daniel again came into the room and said, I'm going to make an oil and it's going to mimic the new covenant. And he was busy making the oil. And then he came into the room and he saw me, and he could see that I was not in a good place. And he went and he got this oil and he said to me, Sarah, stand and walk in righteousness. Walk like your mother, Sarah. And he rubbed my body from head to toe. And when I smelt this oil, I said to him, this is Chayei Sarah. And he was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? I said, this oil is Chayei Sarah. And he pulled me out of the bed, rubbed me down with the oil, put my clothes back on me, and said to me, now walk. And I couldn't walk. I just walked one step at a time. I managed to get out the door, down the steps. It felt like hours. And as I walked, and he was just praying, and he was saying, walk like your Ima, walk in righteousness, walk in the covenant. I could again experience the pain and the inflammation and the trauma and all that residue, because although my memory and my spirit and my soul had been wiped clean of the trauma and the abuse, it was almost as if the toxins or the residue of my past was still in my bones and in my cells and in my spirit, central nervous system, just fell away. And from that day, I never experienced that again. I never had those lupus and fibromyalgia flare-ups again. I was completely healed. And we then packed up from Gordons Bay, and for financial reasons, we had an apartment in Pretoria, so it made more sense to live there. It was a family home and owned by my sisters and myself and my parents, and we didn't have to pay rent, so we could stay there. So we moved, and we then made Pretoria our base, and we began to teach in a supernatural way and be invited all over the country to speak. And one day I had a supernatural experience on one of our journeys. The protocols and the things always came through dreams and through visions and through supernatural encounters. So I would be driving in the car, and the next thing I would just see this vision of three men standing in front of me, and I would be able to have x-ray vision into the men, and I would be able to, and Elohim would say, this is the lymphatic system, and he would tell me the spiritual significance of this, and this is the cardiovascular system, and this is my blood man, and he would tell me how it works, and the central nervous system, and then he'd give me a picture, which I'll share in part 2 of the series. Give me a picture of how these aspects of the body communicate to each other, and then the protocols came with the oils and which oil goes for this and how it works. And also, again, on one of our trips, I had a supernatural experience within driving from Johannesburg to Cape Town. I wrote a book in that time on my phone, compiled it, put it in alphabetical order in a document, and gave it to Daniel for diseases and protocols and conditions that I didn't know existed. I didn't even know how to say fibromyalgia at that time, or polycystic ovarian syndrome, because I'm not a doctor. I do not have medical background. Interestingly, I wanted to be a doctor when I did my O-levels, and then you could choose your subjects for A-levels, which you would then be able, I did Cambridge in Zimbabwe, which then you would be able to then go into the field that you wanted. And I wanted to become a doctor, and went through the student counseling, career guidance counseling, and they told me that I wasn't clever enough. It was like shattering for me, because I didn't know what else I wanted to be. But in hindsight, today, out of the mercy and the greatness of the Creator, He allows me to talk to people in areas and in conditions and in diseases that make me a specialist in His kingdom. Just conveying His ways, His understanding of anatomy, His understanding of medicine, and His understanding of frankincense and myrrh, which then is Him in totality. When you combine the two aromatics, it's everything. It's the kingdom, and it is Him, the Messiah and Elohim. And it the people began to come. As I was understanding one subject of epilepsy or whatever, and then that week 6 people with epilepsy come, or breast cancer, and then that week, as soon as Shabbat ends, the messages are all that week about that. And it was very, very scary, but very exciting. And then my child Israel, he was about between 6 months and 1 year old, and he developed seizures, and it was the most traumatic thing for me and for Daniel, and it broke me. It broke my faith. It broke my the courage that I was going out, and I stopped going on the trips. I stopped going to seminars. I stopped teaching. I took almost like a 1.5 to 2 year gap to just stay with this child. I could not leave him. I didn't want to leave him. To stay with this child, he slept in my bed for the 2 years. And I really cried, and I wrestled, and I asked Adonai to give me 2 years to restore this child with every perceivable tool that I could get my hands on. I was researching every kind of machine that I could import to bring in and to put on him to restore the brain cells and all this. And I, in that question, I would ask Adonai questions. What is quantum? Because now everybody was saying quantum. If you do quantum healing, you can save the child. But I didn't know what it was, and I would say, "What is quantum?" And he would say, "I am quantum. Tune into me." And that flow of electromagnetic fields and quantum and the understanding came in. But the faith that I had developed in Chayei Sarah seemed to have just been taken away. I was shattered. I couldn't help this child in my own capacity. And it was, and that was the lesson, is that I couldn't help him in my own capacity. I was now relying on this on the spirit of Elohim that he had put on me, but I was not relying on him. I was like just moving out in my own strength, or trying to fix this child in my own strength. And the one day I was just laying on the bed, and I was just crying and crying. And we were in Pretoria at the time. There was no wind in Pretoria. I couldn't hear Chayei Sarah anymore. As soon as I left the Western Cape, I couldn't hear Chayei Sarah. And I was just crying the one day, and I was saying, Adonai, please just let me hear your voice one more time, so that I just know that you're there. And I heard loud in my head and in my body and in my spirit. I would say it was even audible. I heard, "No, Sarah, now you must become Sarah." And I got up from that experience, and I just contacted all my friends, my family. Daniel, I think he was overseas at the time in America teaching. And I said, my name is Sarah. Ani Sarah, I said to Daniel. Ani Sarah Emuna Evet. I phoned him, and I said, Ani Sarah Emuna Evet, which is, I am Sarah, faithful servant. And that's how I received my name change, because my name previously, or is on paper, my birth name is Orianne, which is a Hebrew name. It means light and grace. And my second name is Ilona, which is a Hebrew name. It means oak tree, strong oak tree or timber tree. And I don't know if my mother knew that, but it's very interesting that my names were that. I received my name change, and I received healing for Israel. But even though we, in faith and with the oils and with copper and with understanding quantum from a scriptural perspective and making lifestyle changes with this belief, Israel was healed. The seizures stopped. We were able to get him off the medication. We were able to restore his health. He speaks, he reads, he writes. He's this fireball of action, where sometimes he when he would have episodes of seizures, he wouldn't be able to walk. He would be limping. You could see that his body structure was not connecting well. But now he is wonderful, and now I actually can see triggers in him when we go into high places of radiation or electromagnetic disturbance, and I know what to do. And I then went back into my work, where I started to consult, and I started to walk out again in faith with the protocols, with the teaching, and in my own application of the oils again. So that's what I have to say for today. And blessings for the rest of your day.